Welcome to Sense and Sustainability, your podcast channel for sustainable procurement. We hope you like what you hear. Please go to www.iso2400.org for more information and free resources such as articles, case studies, videos, a self-assessment against the standard, and much, much more.
Hello, I'm Shaun McCarthy, Director of Action Sustainability Community Interest Company. As 2023 draws to a close, I thought it might be useful just to record some thoughts and look forward into the new year and understand what the sustainability agenda might have in store for the procurement profession. 2023 in many ways has been a rotten year, hasn't it? The terrible war in Ukraine continues. We now have a new war in Gaza. That affects the whole of the global economy, as well as being terrible, obviously, for those people that are involved. But I think there has been a general realization now of the existential threat of climate change, and that climate change really is a thing, and we really need to do something about it. I think there's a lot of emphasis, quite rightly, on energy and burning of fossil fuels as being the problem. And people often talk about CO2 emissions. We must reduce CO2 emissions. But actually, there are 6 greenhouse gases, many of them much more potent than CO2. So one of the things I'd like to see going forward is to change the narrative a little bit and to refer to greenhouse gas. I was really shocked when I went to the United States in August of this year to understand that there really isn't any legislation around F gases for refrigeration. And they're very potent greenhouse gases, and gases that are banned in Europe are still in common use in the United States and other parts of the world. So I think we need to expand our thinking around what we need to do to actually tackle this issue of climate change. So what does 2023 look like? Well, I'd like to think it's the beginning of the end of greenwash. That sounds a bit weird because these days, every consumer product has got some sort of green thing associated with it. And there's, an awful lot of talk about sustainability that isn't necessarily correct. But there is legislation coming around greenwash, EU legislation in particular, but I think a backlash against greenwash. And also, if I think about it from a procurement point of view, I think we have moved on. There was a time when sustainable procurement was no more than send a questionnaire out to the supplier, get them to fill it in. They'll copy and paste the answer that they did last time with loads of nice stuff about how good they are and how wonderful they are, without any real facts or figures behind it. And then we tick a box to say, yeah, the supplier's filled in the questionnaire. We might allocate a very small weighting factor to the evaluation, but actually make sure that it never really makes any difference to a procurement decision. And we tick a box to say we've done it, and then we move on. Life isn't like that anymore. I think investors, customers, other organizations are actually demanding real performance. I was having a discussion on a podcast only a couple of days ago with a small supplier of eco cleaning products, and they really have nailed their scope 3 carbon emissions. They put an awful lot of effort into this for 12 months, and they've got a really good handle on their scope 3 emissions. They did it because it was the right thing to do. But what they're finding now is their customers are really asking, and they're not just asking about operational emissions. They're asking about scope 3, which goes all the way down the supply chain. And that's really where procurement comes in, and something that we need to consider and start to look for real facts, real information, rather than the sort of the stuff that we used to get before, which wasn't really useful to anybody, quite frankly. But I think we need to understand as well that it's not just about carbon, it's not just about greenhouse gas emissions. Nature, I'm hearing people saying nature is the new carbon, and protection of our natural assets around the world is absolutely essential if we're going to try and get the planet back on track. It's not just about reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, it's actually looking at the depletion of habitats. We're also starting to hear the expression just transition. What does that mean? Well, what that means is as we transition to a low carbon economy, we need to make sure that people aren't left behind. There will undoubtedly be winners and losers as we move towards a low carbon economy. We need to make sure that those people that are disadvantaged are actually helped in some way, potentially to find jobs, to find alternative ways of living, because it's not their fault. Somebody who works in the oil and gas sector or the mining sector or whatever are working to earn a living. They're not to blame for climate change. So we need to make sure that those people are looked after. So what does it mean for procurement people? Well, unfortunately, I think it means it's going to get more complicated. Sorry, guys, but it really is. Let me quote a couple of examples for you of work that my team have looked at in this last year and will be publishing next year and promoting. Solar energy, fantastic, brilliant. One of the cheapest and certainly the greenest forms of energy you can buy. So organizations are currently flocking to buy solar panels and to get them installed, and that's not going to change. That's only going to accelerate in the new year because solar is a really good idea. If you've got roofs to put your solar panels on, if you've got some land that you can put solar panels in, you can generate the electricity for free. It's pretty much zero carbon. There is embodied carbon, obviously, in the manufacture of the solar panels, but these panels last 20 years, 25 years or more. So there's more than enough payback of the embodied carbon, providing these panels are used effectively. But the supply chain, as we found out this year, is really complex. My team did a fantastic report on the strategic sourcing of solar panels. It's an industry very much dominated by China, and there's significant evidence of forced labor in the supply chains of those solar panels. This is clearly an issue. I mean, it's an issue for reputational damage, but it's also becoming a legislative issue. The United States has basically legislated that nothing can come into the US unless you can demonstrate that it's slave free. So there's stockpiles of things arriving in the United States ports that cannot be imported because they don't have that assurance and that certification. Even companies that are potentially more ethical. There's a United States supplier of solar panels, First Solar. They found modern slavery issues in some of their manufacturing facilities in Vietnam. They've been very open about it. They've reported it. They're helping the victims and they're doing the right thing. But no doubt this is a product that is not without risk. So let's look at another example. Lots of clients and organizations are talking about becoming diesel free. Diesel engines are very significant emitters of greenhouse gases. They're also very significant emitters of pollution that actually harms human health. And throughout the sector, the logistics sector, construction, plant, domestic motor cars, etc., are transitioning to alternative fuels, alternative propulsion. The problem is we're looking for an interim solution right now, because if we start to look at heavy plant, lorries, diggers, generators, etc., moving to electric, battery, solar storage solutions isn't quite there yet. So hence the rise of hydro-treated vegetable oil, HVO, really popular now. Very low emissions, very good fuel to use. Seems like a great idea, doesn't it? Why don't we buy some HVO? Yes, that is a good idea. But what we find, although this is a product that has significantly lower carbon emissions, it depends where the vegetable oil is coming from. A lot of HVO is made from the catering sector, from used cooking oil, for example, and that's good because it's a second use of that cooking oil. It's a very green, it's quite an ethical solution. But a lot of other grades of HVO actually come from sources that could alternatively be used for food. So palm oil is a very good example, which is a very controversial issue around deforestation. So virgin oil produced from agricultural sources is potentially harmful to the species, to the environment. We need to understand that. The problem is this is a very unregulated product at the moment because it's new. And regulation is actually and certification is falling behind the demand for this product. So I'm not saying don't buy HVO. What I'm saying is buyer beware. We need to look at this complex supply chain, really understand what we're buying. So we need to understand where the raw materials for this product actually comes from. My team are working at the moment on a really good review of HVO, and we will be producing some guidance in the new year. But it's a complex issue. These are just two examples. I think the good news for me is there's never been a better time to be in procurement. How exciting is this that we're actually looking at buying these new products, but really understanding strategically and globally where they come from, how they're made, what the risk issues are. It's complex and it's difficult, but it's exciting. Most organizations around the world do around 80% of what they do through their supply chains. So procurement in the future is going to be absolutely pivotal to this move towards a low carbon environment, towards a more ethical environment, and towards a more biologically diverse environment. So it's a great time to be involved in procurement. I wish you well for 2024. I wish you well with your sustainable procurement journey going forward. And we'd be very happy to help and to provide you with lots more information and resources in the new year that will help you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our podcast on sense and sustainability. Please listen out for more episodes. For more information, learning resources, tools, and much more on sustainable procurement, go to www.iso2400.org.